Pam got us all ready to go to church.
Right.
Always.
Pam said, "It's for me and my stream.
For me and my stream,
we will serve the Lord."
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. We will be starting shortly. Thank you all for joining. Give us a couple of more minutes.
Miss Pam, it's live on your Facebook?
Yes, it's live on my Facebook, so you can share. Make sure you tag some friends that are dealing with grief or going through the process.
Make it public on your page.
Hey, everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, Amy, we're live. Thank you for joining. Thank you. everyone. I hope you are having a great evening. My name is Pamela A. Davis. I am the founder and CEO of Queen of Resilience, and we believe in increasing mental health awareness one queen at a time. So this year in 2020, we have started the QOR conversations, and our conversation for tonight is grief, love, and the holidays. I don't know if you are experiencing grief or have experiencing grief, but it is definitely a process. So we want to talk about it tonight. We have a great panel of young women and young men, and we're just going to go for it. I also want our co-host, Precious, to introduce herself, because we will be tag teaming this conversation tonight.
Hello, everyone. I am Precious Simone, the president of Queen of Resilience. And so I'm so excited to be here with Pam as she has continuously walked out this journey of healing and this grieving process this year as well as last year. It is definitely a process. And so I'm so excited to just be here. Thank you so much for our panelists for taking time out to be here. And I'm ready.
Yes. So before we jump into the conversation, I would just like for each panelist to introduce themselves. And we're going to start with Ms. Geraldine Roberts.
Hey everyone, I'm Geraldine Roberts. I'm the founder of GEM Coaching and Wellness, where we really focus on giving tools and guidance for self-healing practices through loss, transition, and trauma. And so I'm very, very excited to be here tonight. Thank you for the invitation.
Anytime. Thank you. Miss Amy Leishman.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Leachman. I am a registered nurse. I work in high-risk obstetrics and gynecology. I just recently graduated as of yesterday with my Master of Science in Nursing, and I will be a healthcare practitioner very soon. So if you hear a little bit of background noise, it's my family here celebrating with me, but I'm going to try to mute them as much as possible. And I look forward to speaking with you all today and being on this panel. And I just look great. I look forward to the great conversations that are about to take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy, for joining. All right, next we have Mr. D. Swoon.
Greetings of peace. And
you waiting on me?
Everybody. My name is D. Smooth Shabazz. More people know me as the voice of the streets. I'm a radio personality on Streets 25.1. Currently have the #1 show Tuesdays through Saturdays, 5 to 8 p.m. Definitely can tune in with me. I'm a mental health advocate, and I'm also a father and a community activist.
Thank you, Swoon, for joining. And next we have Pastor Petty. He is my spiritual father. I have been knowing him for years. I look up to him. Okay. I just want to make him proud. That's it. But I'm just going to have Pastor Petty to introduce himself. All right, and you can unmute yourself, Pastor Petty.
Okay. Well, you know, I'm just this guy that goes around helping people make sense out of nonsense. I've probably been doing this the last 25 years of working with everything from 2 or 3 year olds up to people in their actual 90s, dealing with life challenges. And this particular area is something that I ultimately end up having to spend a lot of time in, from doing work in the schools because of the level of violence that occurs so dramatically, and particularly now during this time of COVID. So Pam, thanks for asking me to be a part of this. And, you know, hopefully as this goes along, that there are some takeaways that people would have and they can be better off as a result.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. So Precious, you ready? Unmute yourself, Precious.
Yeah,
I'm ready. You know me, Pam. I stay ready. I don't know the gear is always in go.
All right, so we definitely want to have some laughter here tonight. It's all about love. It's the holidays. Grief is difficult, you guys. I wanted to have this conversation because last year I lost my mom in September, and just about 2 months ago, I lost my father. So I am growing through the process. I am healing through the process. And I want us to have a conversation, though this conversation can be difficult, but through hearing the words that maybe I say or someone say on the panel, maybe they can touch you, heal you, or reach out to the resources that you need in order for you to become better with this. So panel, the first question I have for you is, what does grief look like for you? What is your personal process, or what has your personal process been? And anyone can go for that.
I can jump in. So I think in my life, I've lost a lot of people. And I think in the past, it was always like, that's sad, I'm heartbroken, and I got to keep going. And I just kind of like keep moving. And last October, I lost my baby brother to gun violence. He was 23 years old. And that shook me, like flipped my world upside down. And so what it has looked like for me since then is really slowing down and allowing myself to really feel the things that come up. I think in the past, when I felt, the wave of grief coming, I try to get busy and do something to avoid it. And I have recently been able to just allow those feelings to come up, to cry the tears, to write the words, to whatever it is, to get it out, so that it doesn't get trapped in my body.
That's good. That's good. So you journaling, that's your process of dealing with grief.
Oh yeah, and I think it just depends, right? So sometimes it's journaling, sometimes it's crying, sometimes it's moving my body, in movement. Sometimes it's straight up praise and worship. Sometimes it's so I think sometimes we can put ourselves in a box of like this is what grief should look like. And for me, I'm just trying to be open to whatever is coming up for me, just allowing and just being without judgment of where I am and not judging what I think I should be doing, and just flowing with riding the waves of grief as they come.
That's good. That's good. No judge zone here when it comes to grief. Did anybody else want to move forward with that or answer that question? How has grief been for you?
I can go ahead and chime in. So it is actually, so my mom passed when I was 14 years old. She suffered from lupus and a lot of comorbidities and things that kind of went on from that. So she passed away December 27th, 2005. So this year it's been 15 years. And then my aunt passed away December 1st, 2012 from breast cancer. So just having, around the holiday times, I was dealing with grief when both of them passed. And so each year is, it's a reminder, but my relationship with God, my relationship with my family and friends, and having a good support system has allowed me to get through all these years. And without that, I would not, I wouldn't be able to grieve. And I don't know, it's just if I didn't have that, I don't know how my coping would have been. And so I just continue to try to keep traditions going, keep spending time with family and friends, and just, my life's purpose of being able to take care of others and give back to others. I utilize that as my way of helping me to cope.
That's good. That's good. Family and friends and the support system is very important. I remember when my mom first passed, the first person I called was Pastor Petty. And then after Pastor Petty, it was Amy. They was over here like less than an hour. I'm like, wow, y'all over here this quick. But having the support of family and friends is amazing. Did anybody else want to answer that question? D Smooth?
Yeah. I was just going to chime in. So how I lost my mother to breast cancer in 2018. And before then, I had never really dealt with death before. I've lost people that were around me, but not anybody who was necessarily a necessity to me. Somebody that I could see every day, and somebody that I went and talked to, or that I had that close relationship with, to where I needed to talk to you every day, because that's what the normal routine was. So after losing my mom, I had to actually process it, and I actually dealt with a whole 6 months of depression. And all the while, I had a daughter on the way. So I say that to say that along the way, just not knowing who to turn to really, really deepen and dampen my spirit. But now that I have my daughter, now that I see her growing and showing the ways that my mother did, or doing something that my mother would have wanted me to do for her, or just having my whole friends and family just always continue to bring that my mother is a or my daughter is an embodiment of my mother. And also, with serving the community and finding my true purpose in life, it really, really helps me deal with grief on a daily basis, because I know now that I know I'm living in my purpose, and now that I know I can go home and see her smiling face, I'm able to make it through anything.
Mhm.
That's good. That's good. Wow. Precious, do you have anything?
Yes, I want to talk to Pastor. I want to make sure I get it right because I don't want to butcher anyone's name. It's Pastor Petty. Petty. Pastor P. Can I call you Pastor P?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, for whatever reason, I'm having a very difficult time when you all are speaking. It's not really clear, but Pam is pretty clear. But let me try to weigh in based on what I've heard, and I suppose that well, it's pretty clear. I've had a lot more extended journey in dealing with loss than you all probably have, not only personally, but then at the same time looking at having to help people to work through this, to work through all of this. I lost best friends very young. Actually saw my mother take her very last breath, and the list goes on. And then having to deal with uh, young children, just like Geraldine talked about, younger brother, having to see teenagers and working with families through all of those things. So the lens that I operate from is a little bit different. Not just well, one from being a pastor, the second of having a background in psychology and in Christian counseling. So the context for me is a little bit different because of the perspective that I have about life in general and the cycle of life and what that really means and where you actually find yourself. So let me offer a few things that might be helpful about the impact, some of the emotions that you might be experiencing, that anyone might as a result of dealing with loss. And the reality is a loss is a loss, whether it was something that was expected or something that was not. And loss just has an impact on our being human. But one of the things that you don't want to do, and if I don't say anything else that would make any sense, this would be one of the things to keep in mind. You don't want to build monuments. You want to build memorials. You don't build monuments because the monuments will become an idol to you, and you can never be okay with it being an idol. And that's one of the reasons why, although I would never try to stop anybody from doing it, but is to try to avoid people annually going to grave sites, annually doing things, because what happens at that stage, it becomes a monument, and you start preparing yourself to go back and to do it all over again. And it starts to open up so many other things versus you do as a result of the decision that you make, you can become a living memorial of the relationship existed from where there was an actual loss. A living memorial would be that everything that individual has embedded down inside of you, you begin to live it out. So being a living memorial is the driving force that keeps you in the healthiest place. Otherwise,
That was so good.
It was about to be good.
I had to write my notebook.
You don't build monuments, but memorials. I'm over here.
That's good.
I hope you guys are taking notes. I'm a note taker. Okay,
Mhm.
add him back in. Okay, 'cause that was good.
Me too, Pam.
Yeah, I had to grab my notebook. I was like, let me go grab my
as
notebook.
I was saying, I mean, this is a piece of work with the internet. Haven't had this type of challenge, but what will happen? The draining aspect is if it becomes a monument. The liberating aspect is if it becomes a memorial. And then that becomes the different way that you embed to say, here's everything that I learned. So because the greatest compliment that you can get about somebody that you may have lost would be the fact that they're able to see some evidence that you were associated with them. And then that begins to articulate the relationship. And now, so that's the tribute that you actually have for the person. But there are some things that have to happen before you can get to that place, because you have to get to all of the emotions associated with it and to reconcile all of that. So I've kind of said a lot at that stage. I mean, there are mounds of other things that I could probably say, but let me just kind of stop there for a moment because there are stages, there are things that you find that are relative to that. And although it's scripted to say these are the stages, but it's not necessarily everybody goes through them the same way, but they're real. They're actually real after having looked at the impact of where people are in terms of loss. And so I have 4 stages. Historically, there's been about 5 there, but one is you come to the place where when you get to these stages, the first one is some level of emotional numbness, or just flat out shock. I mean, you're just there. You're numb. You're shocked, and it may take a minute to get back to a place where you can actually function. You may shut down. Some people just might just flat shut down because nothing makes any sense at that point. I mean, you've been so overwhelmed with all that has happened, and somebody could be 120 years old and pass, and the impact is just as strong for a 120-year-old passing as it is for an infant. It's because loss is loss is loss. And so nobody can minimize it. Sometimes a person is elderly and folks say, well, they live a great life. Why you let that bother you? They live a great life. Well, that's just because they don't understand. They really don't understand. Then you may get into this whole thing because your world now has been disrupted. It's so disrupted and so out of balance because you were so accustomed to engaging and having these conversations or being able to get in contact. And then with that, very easily, you could have anger that goes along with that. This disruption, this anger, some despair of why bother anymore? I don't know what I'm going to do. And these are things that are a natural part of what we have to deal with. And it may resurface all over again. You may find yourself doing this, and then you'll find yourself in the same place all over again. And some people don't understand because too many times they're trying to rush you through a process and they don't understand. They really don't understand. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But when you get past that, then it's time for something else to take place, where you have to look at reorganization of your life. And that says, now I've got to shift because that person isn't here. That person is not here. So now what I have to do, I have to reorganize in order to reintegrate, because now I've got to rearrange. It's like taking a home and you're dealing with interior decorating, because now you have to move in a different space from what it was, because some things will never be the same. But I have to get to that place. Until I've gotten to there, then I'm not in my healthy place, because I have to get to the reorganize and the reintegration place in order to be able to take the next step, because the next part of that is where you really begin to turn the corner. But I have to come to a place to say, okay, they're not coming back. Okay, here's my reality. Okay, I can talk about them. I can talk about all of the things, but the reality is I'm not going to be able to sit down and talk to them. And please don't think that they come in and visit you in your room and have conversations, because they're not. Just don't fall for that one. They're not. It will be something, but it will not be them. Something may come in the room and, okay, that's another story, but it will not be them. If it is, you probably need to run. Okay, all right, let me do this. Okay, the next part is reinvest. The reinvestment says I've turned the corner. I realize I really need to organize. So now I need to reinvest to get to a place where I can have a renewed commitment to living now. Because if you're not sure, you could end up where you start to shrink. You start to shrink into a space where you're really thrown off. Now, this is where a personal relationship with Jesus Christ comes in, where you're in a position to start really focusing on your spiritual growth and development at that stage, because you're recommitting yourself to living, to living. And all of us have a shelf life. All of us have a shelf life, and there are a lot of things, a lot of transitions that we make. And sometimes we don't really want to. We want to always talk about how good it was, what it used to be, on and on. If it's good, if it's great, then you celebrate it in a way, again, that suddenly now it becomes a living memorial, and you can celebrate. Now, you know what? I had a dad that was off the chain, like flat stone heathen, a flat stone heathen. I've known nobody worse in my life than my dad. You follow me? But I remember him crystal clear. I remember him, but everything good about him, I can play back out. Some of the foul stuff, I don't ever want to remember. So I'm not gonna build a monument to him. So, but I remember and the things that were of value because I understood that were it not for him, then it couldn't be me. In spite of how jacked up he was, it required what he had to offer mixed with my mother.
Every time it's good. Pivot. I mean, wow. We're gonna add them back in.
Yeah, I was like, come on, Pastor Brady, come on.
Right, I told her, like, come on, Professor.
Okay, for this wonderful me, let me stop there because it seems like every time I say something, it's like click. But okay.
No, this is good. We need this. Reinvest to reintegrate. We need the next two. You can't give up now.
Okay, you want me to go further? You want me to keep going?
We got two more. You got the people on the edge of their seat. I'm about to fall off over here. You talking about you gonna stop? No, I need more.
Okay, you're talking about my dad. If you ever met him, you would never forget him. That's all I can tell you. If you can picture, and I'll give you an example. I was on baseball scholarship in college. My dad was an alcoholic on top of everything else. Here's one of the things that I did. I took him to a game, and he's up in the stands. This dad is up in the stands, and he's heckling me while out on the mound, and I'm pitching. At the top of his voice, he's shouting, "You can't pitch. You can't pitch. What makes you think you're any good? Look at there." So you can imagine when the game is over, when I get ready to leave and they see him leaving with me. You just got to picture that. Now that gives you some indication of my dad. Okay. He's up there. Look at him. He can't pitch. Okay. All right. So
see.
But I remember him. But I do not build a monument to him. I just remember him. Now, so let me tell you, so not only do you get to those phases, but let me talk to you about some of the emotions. And these are things that not only if you're dealing with it, but you'll be able to help someone, because I'll talk to you about how you can walk alongside someone who wrestles with this. These are some of the emotions and thoughts that might just come, which are normal. These are normal things. And as a result, then you don't want to feel as though there's something wrong with you. You'll have a sense of denial. Sometimes you don't even want to say it's happened, but it is. There is someone that I know that mother and father passed, and in the house that she is living in, and they've been gone over 9 years, and she has not touched a thing in the house that was theirs. Now that's what you call a monument. The bed is made up the same way. Every item, everything that every piece of silverware that they use, everything is exactly the same way that it was left. And so she goes in and goes through the routine in that regard. Now she's been doing this for the last 9 years. Has not touched a thing. It's just like it was, as though they were walking in. That's one of the responses. So if you're talking about denial, that's an indication of denial. So the other thing is disbelief. Like, I still can't believe this. I just saw them. You know how I go?
See, technology.
He a tease now.
That's the thing. What we're gonna do, we're gonna bring him back with those. But
okay.
I think that.
So how many checks is this? How many takes is this? Taking what?
Pastor Patty, okay. We got denial and we got disbelief. We're gonna go furthermore with some of the questions, and then we're gonna bring you back. Okay.
Now go. Now, so Pam, text them to me to be sure, since I'm having a difficult time with some of it. In case the question, text it if you think I need to weigh in on it. In case I don't understand what you're saying.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So the next question for you all is, can everyone please put this question on mute? All right. So the next question for you all is, what traditions have you continued with in honor of your loved ones during the holidays? So we know that we just had Thanksgiving and Christmas is coming up. What traditions are you continuing with? And anybody can go.
If there's any type of tradition, we want to make sure that's broad too. So what kind of tradition? If there was something that a custom you all did, if it was having hot chocolate and watching Home Alone. So I mean, whatever. So whatever kind of tradition y'all may have had that you still cherish.
I'll unmute myself. As a family, we used to always watch the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade every year. So, of course, Thanksgiving, I watched the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and I watched it with my son, you know. So, it's something small, and then just, you know, like the gift giving and just trying to do something like Christmas cards and that kind of stuff. But other than that, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Anybody else want to ask that?
So, me and my family, like the two bigger holidays are Mother's Day and Thanksgiving. So we haven't really, you know, Christmas isn't like really like a thing because like we just exchanging gifts, but we've always had a time where we spent time together. So me, my brother, or my sister, you know what I'm saying, we'll probably just exchange gifts or something like that. But those two holidays, Thanksgiving and Mother's Day, were really important. So also I lost my grandmother 2 months ago as well. So now we're kind of trying to get back into the habit of circling around each other on my mother's side as well, because my granny was the one that had the family restaurant, and we used to all come down there for every celebration to celebrate every holiday. So now we're trying to figure out how we're going to kind of circle everything back around. But other than that, we still kind of get together as a family, but we just don't have that direction right now.
And that's understandable. Geraldine, did you want to add anything to that?
We don't necessarily have any traditions that we would do that is any different than what we're doing now. I think for everyone, I think everybody's dealing with COVID. There comes grief in itself, right? And grieving like how we would have done things and shifting now how we have to do things differently that way. But no real big traditions. Other than on his birthday, we would bake him a apple pie, and so his birthday's the day after Christmas, and so we only did it 1 year, and then the next year he was gone. So me and my daughter, we were saying, okay, we're still gonna bake an apple something on his birthday every year, even though he's no longer with us. So
yeah, that's good. I remember just with Thanksgiving. Because last year was the first year with for the holidays for me being without, my mom, and even making macaroni and cheese was difficult for me. Like I'm laughing because Amy is laughing because I already told her this story, but it was very difficult for me because I used to do that with my mom. So even some of the traditions, it's hard or difficult to carry on when you lost a loved one. Did anybody else? Pastor Petty just left for a second. He'll be back, you guys. He'll be back. But Amy, I wanted to ask you this question. Why does grief affect our body? How does it affect our body? How does grief, with you being a nurse, I know Pastor Petty touched on some of the emotions, but how does grief affect our body?
I mean, you just have to think about it. Like, if you're under just a prolonged period of stress, you are eventually going to start to feel ill. You're going to start to feel sick. You may not have anything physiologically wrong with you. Like, you may not have caught a cold. You may not have eaten the wrong food, but you're going to feel sick to your stomach if you constantly grieving, constantly stressed out, constantly feeling depressed, constantly, or just feeling unwell. And if you aren't seeing about therapy or medications or psychiatrists, psychologists, if you aren't getting help for those things and you're kind of constantly like internalizing them, it's going to make you sick until you release those things, until you find some sort of way to get help and kind of find some sort of coping mechanism, of any sort, whatever works for you. I'm a believer of God and I'm a believer of medicine. And I tell everybody that, so you have to do what works for you. If you don't want to go the medication route, I mean, I've had a therapist and I was seeing her on a weekly basis through my period of my custody, my child custody case and everything. So I had to have help to kind of get through that period, and it's crazy because I dealt with grief with my mom and my aunt, but it was just after having a child and kind of going through things, that was a period that kind of took me down the part where I felt like I was just grieving that whole situation differently, that separation of failed relationship differently. And it may not be a loss of a loved one, but it may be, you can grieve, your husband or your wife, you can grieve a divorce, a separation. So it doesn't always have to deal with, someone physically leaving this earth. It can be a form of grief.
That's good. Mm-hmm. That's good. Precious, you wanted to add anything to that?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Pastor Petty, can you hear me? Dr. Petty? Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Yes. I wanted to ask you, so why do people frown upon believers going to see therapists? Why do they frown upon believers going to see therapists or feel as if they're not trusting God? Like Amy said, she believes in God and medicine. But so many people say, well, no, you have to choose. You have to choose therapist or God's word. You have to choose God or medicine. You can't be in the middle. You can't choose both. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Okay, can you actually, I can't, because here's the thing. I do biblical counseling, but I'm trained as a psychologist. So it's pretty clear that it's possible because my background, to give you some idea, I have a 2-year degree in physical education, a bachelor's and master's in psychology, and a doctorate in Christian counseling. So it gets into the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual aspect of it. And the word of God.
Oh. Dr. Petty playing with my emotions today.
Playing with all of my emotions. All of them. Technology.
You need to choose a different room.
This is spiritual warfare that we're dealing with. That I can do. I mean, there's no because if you think about it, if wisdom comes from God, if true wisdom comes from him, then how can that be? Because everyone who claims to know anything, the only source that it will always come from even those who are part of the Mensa society who are geniuses, their wisdom comes from him. They may not affirm it or acknowledge it, but everything that has any value, it all comes from him. For instance, nobody invents or discovers or creates anything. They discover something that already existed. And so therefore, when somebody says I have to choose between, quote, a therapist and what the word said, the reality is if it's somebody who's operating strictly from the schools of psychology or counseling, now that might be problematic if a person has a spiritual background because it may be in conflict. So that's why you don't just go to anyone, you go to someone who has the context to be able to walk you through so that you don't believe that you have had to compromise your faith. Because your faith is integrated by trusting the knowledge of what gives you the right options. So and let me just say this, people who are Christian, but who are not Christian counselors. I hope you follow what I mean, because their context is not coming from there, although they could be a person of faith themselves, because they have to have the awareness to be able to know how to integrate them. And that's the case. So there's a set of individuals that I may refer someone to, but I understand where they are. Let's just say if there is a particular female related issue that's non-generic, then there is somebody that I know who is grounded in the word, but who's trained according to quote the so-called schools, but they integrate the two.
Good. That's good. That's really good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
That's good.
You're
All right, Pam,
welcome.
the floor is yours.
Integrate the.
That's good. That's good.
Wow. Wow. So my next question is it possible to thrive in grief? Is it possible to thrive in grief? Is that a such thing? Is that a such thing? Can we do that?
I will say yes, it is. For me, I use my grief to
Try saying that again. I got it lost in translation.
Is it possible to thrive in grief? Keep going, these fools. I hear you.
Okay, I can hear me. So yeah, I think it's very possible because I definitely I became a different man after I lost my mother. And I literally had to have a whole breakdown of who I was and what I was doing with my life.
Okay, all right, okay, I got it. I got it now. Thanks for testing it then that way. Yeah, okay, is it possible to thrive in grief? Actually, if you're a person of faith, so let me start there. In 2 Corinthians chapter 1, it says the comfort that God is the God of all comfort, and he comforts us in every situation so we can have the ministry of being a comforter, or of one who helps to reconcile people to a place of being stable. But before you can do that, you have to have already received the comfort without it being a burden. And now you are a thriver because now you become one who transfers the comfort that you've received over to someone else to be able to walk alongside. The actual thriving in grief is gaining the victory and then being able to walk along somebody else. You never lose sight that there's somebody else who is steps behind where you are, in spite of where you think you have not gone when it comes to grief. Somebody is in a worse situation than you are. So the way that you grow or thrive in grief is that you take this step to see, I can breathe 5 breaths a day, and yesterday it was only 2. So now I need to find somebody who's only breathing 1, and at least I can help them to understand that it can move from 1 to 2.
Every time it get good. Every time. These fools, if you want to jump back in and finish what you were saying before.
Okay, yeah, most definitely. And what I was saying was that in kind of breaking myself down and analyzing who I was, I really had to become a man of who I thought I was. And breaking myself down is literally one of the hardest things that I ever had to do. And when I did that and I searched for my purpose, because of the grief that I was suffering, because I didn't know what next step I wanted to take, I became who I am now. And now I'm seeing things that I always thought I would see, but now to actually see it and live it is 2 totally different things. So it's definitely possible to thrive and still be grieving, because it's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my mother or I don't think about my grandmother, because those are 2 women who made me who I was.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Not a day that goes by. I say every day I miss my mom. Every day. I don't go a day without saying I miss my mom, and it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. It's real.
Yeah.
It's so real. Like the pain that you feel with losing a loved one, and it's like, why do I feel so much pain? Because my mom was, she had a lot of health issues. So I know that she's at peace now, but why, after she passed, why do I feel so much pain? And then Pastor Petty, if you want to talk about that, just the pain of losing a loved one, someone that you love and cared about, why is it painful? I'm not sure if he heard me or not. Can you hear me?
Okay, I heard you said talk about the pain of losing a loved one.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, that you first have to deal with the fact of the things that are going to be coming your way. Now, if there's some awareness, and that's why being and maybe counseling is not the right term, or you could use the term, but what it really ought to be called is transitional life adjustment. Now, if I look at going to sit down and talk to someone and say that just like you go to a chiropractor and get an adjustment, well, if I go sit down and talk to somebody and talk about I need a life adjustment, then I don't have the stigma associated with it going to sit down and talk to somebody, because in all honesty, somebody who's unwilling to talk to somebody is somebody you need to stay away from, because they got stuff going on, because they're locked in to the restrictive level of information that they have to themselves. And that means that they are prone to stay where they are. And the reason is because they're where they are is because they could not utilize any other options other than what they had at that moment. So the only way to move from the place that you're in, your options have to increase. Your options only increase if you have more information. Because if I do what I do, and this is what I do, I'm doing that because this is all that I know. Now, when I get some options available, now I have something different to consider. But if I don't have something else to consider, then I'm already in trouble. So to understand the whole issue of grieving, I probably need to talk to somebody in order to understand that I'm probably going to experience fatigue. I'm probably going to have a lack of energy. My appetite may be all over the place. These are some things that are just naturally a part of it. Is that then I may have excessive sleep. I may overwork. I may get too busy, start doing all of that. My moods may go from 0 to 100 just like that. I could be smiling this moment, and before the smile ends, there's a frown on my face, and I'm ticked about something. And here the people are sitting looking at me trying to wonder, whoa, what's going on with her? Well, this is what these emotions start to do. I could be very irritable, just irritated, easily irritated about some things that didn't irritate me like that before. And so if I understand that, and then here's something else, I may have some memory lapses. My concentration level may not be as great as it was. I may find myself daydreaming in the midst of stuff a lot, and somebody think that I'm ignoring them, but they don't understand that actual grieving can have an impact on your memory. You could have a memory lapse, your concentration, your ability to.
Actual grieving.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, with your memory. Have any of you guys experienced that?
Mm. Yeah, I think I kind of. Oh, go ahead, Pastor.
Okay. And you know, and here's the other thing. And if you're a person of faith, it could either drive you to him or away from him. You could shut down and say, I'm not doing God right now. I'm not doing him right now. I ain't feeling him today. You know, I'm not going to be spending that time doing all of that. Or it will drive you to a place where you realize that if I don't, I'm done. Mm-hmm. All of that is a part of. So as I understand that, then now I don't feel weird or awkward if I'm in this place where I don't want to bother with somebody. I don't really want to be bothered. Wow. And I shouldn't have to explain it to somebody that I don't want to be bothered. I shouldn't have to explain it. So now when I know these are things that are part of it, then here's what I can do to be able to cope. I express my feelings and being very honest with people. I'm saying what I'm going to say. And because I'm going to keep myself around safe people who have my best interests at heart. So if I say something and it seems so unusual from what they are accustomed to, if they're safe people and they have my best interests at heart, I can just say anything. I can just say anything without trying to be correct about it. I have to take care of my health. It's so critical, because during those times we tend to slack off on eating habits, dealing with your rest. You're not conscious if you was on any type of exercise routine that may end up being compromised. And then I have to look at the fact that if I am alive, life is for the living. If I'm alive and I know that, then I got to recognize life is for the living. And as long as I'm here, I may as well go for it. I go for it because, again, that's that living memorial for them. Because if you could talk to them now, and again, you can't, but if you could, they will tell you, you got to keep going. I'm not coming back. You got to keep going. You know, do me a favor. Keep living. Get the most out of it, because you don't know when your last day is. That's what they will tell you. Because don't look.
So good.
Life
Dang. Life is for the living. As long as I'm here, I might as well go for it.
Keep going. Keep pushing.
Keep going, Pam. Keep going, y'all.
Keep going. Life is for the living. We can't stop at all. At all. I mean,
so before it cuts me off again, let me give you the last two things. Listen, no changes. Don't make any major changes in your life while you're getting to that place to shift, to reinvest in how you live. No major changes, nothing abrupt. Don't all of a sudden say, I'm going to go and do something that I never thought about doing before. This is not the time to do that, because you're too emotional and you can't handle it. And you've got to be patient. You've got to be patient. No major changes, no major decisions. Wrong time to do that.
That's good. No major changes, no major decisions. We haven't even opened up the floor for questions, but we do have a question from Jennifer Hanks. She says, how can I help a friend who is grieving during the holidays? What are some things I can do to help her cope her losses without feeling like I'm intruding? That's good.
Okay. That would be one of the next thing. Now, the first thing is make sure that you're okay. You don't take junk into an unstable situation. So if you're not in one piece, don't take junk. Don't take junk into an unstable situation, because that means it will be a disaster. Meaning well. So here's some of the things that you can do. The first thing you need to say is that I'm just available. I'm just available. But don't tell someone you're available if you're not really available. And this is one of the worst things. You see it all the time at home going through. Call me if you need me. You know you can count on me. I'll be there for you. Just let me know how I can help. Well, those are just passing words. The question is, if you are not, then don't tell somebody that. Because if you say that, then the expectation is they could call you at 2 or 3 in the morning, and you're not going to look at the phone and say, don't be calling me anymore. I mean, that's what this is all about. So you be available. You don't judge. You don't judge. You give room for this roller coaster experience. If you're really going to be there for them, it's going to be a roller coaster. It won't be a nice, tidy fit. When you're there for somebody who is grieving, it's not going to be you say a couple of words and all of a sudden they're straightened up. That's not how it goes. It will be a roller coaster experience. You could have 10 consecutive great days and then at the beginning of the 11th one, everything crashes like those 10 days never meant anything. And that's a part of the process. Then don't claim, this is one of the worst things. Oh, I know how you feel. No, you don't. I know exactly how you feel. I lost my mama, so I know how it feels to lose a mama. Well, you didn't lose my mama.
Come on.
So you don't even tell anybody that. Because you don't know the depths of what that was like. So you don't tell them. You just got to patiently be there with them. Now, it's okay to mention the person if you knew them. It's okay to talk about, your mom, like Pam's mom. Well, I can talk about May all day. I can talk about May all day, and some of the some of the things about May. Oh, it's some things about May I could talk to Pam about, and she would say, "You sure right." Like Pam's mom would say sometimes, "Well, you know how Pam is. She thinks she my mama now." Okay, so and you commit for the long haul. You commit to say, you know what, I'm here. If it's say to somebody, you can call me at any time. If you don't mean that, don't say that.
Yeah.
You just don't say it.
Wow. So be patient with individuals who are grieving.
Mm-hmm.
Them, just be patient. Don't say, I know how you feel, because like Pastor Petty just said, you don't know my mama. So just be patient with those individuals, because it is a roller coaster. Precious, do you have anything, or do you want us to move to the next question?
Keep going, because I'm over here taking notes.
Yeah.
Dr. Petty pouring out. He ringing out. This is really good.
Right.
I do love, before you go, I do love the point on not making any drastic changes or really moving abruptly when you're in that transitional life adjustment stage, because I think we all have been guilty of, I'm in this state and I'm just about to start doing, and it actually has the adverse effect on you. And then you look up and like, what did I do? Why did I just do that? And it causes a little bit more damage. So I think that can relate to a lot of areas. So I really appreciate that comment, Dr. Petty. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope you all are taking notes. This is Queen of Resilience, Grief, Love, and the Holidays. We are having an amazing conversation with our panelists. And if you can just go in now and just share and like and just tag someone who is experiencing grief, who's going through grief, so they can take these tools and apply it to their life.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So recently, I read an article by Prism titled "How Black Women Can Create Space for Grief and Vulnerability During the Holidays." As Black women, they stated, our grief stories are severely underreported, diminishing our ability to share openly about what grief means to us both individually and culturally. So ladies, the ladies I have on the panel, how do we make sure that our stories are heard individually and culturally when it comes to grief? How do we make sure that our stories are heard individually and culturally when it comes to grief, ladies?
Mm-hmm. I would say for me, it's about just being transparent and being willing to share my story, but also being comfortable to say no when I'm not in that place to share my story, and creating boundaries and being okay with that. That I don't have to feel like I have to be on all the time, or that I have to share my story in order for when I'm not in the place to do that, because that can be hard too. And so just making sure that I'm being as transparent as possible, and that my story is my story. And like Pastor Petty was saying, like, just because you may have experienced something similar, that doesn't mean that our reaction is the same and how we deal with it is the same. Everybody, I think, is dealing with grief so differently. And I think it's important that we make space for people to deal with it in the way that is healthy for them. And it may not look the same. And so I think for me, it's not taking on the expectations of everyone around me, but being self-aware and tuned in with my own self to be able to say no, or yes, I want to share my story, or this is how much I am willing to share. And so I think it's just important for us to be able to feel comfortable to say no, because I think as Black women, we often feel like we have to say yes, or we have to carry the burdens of everyone else. Or if everyone else around us is grieving as well, we're like, okay, I just need to suck it up and keep going. Like, it's okay as a Black woman to rest. And it's okay as a Black woman to say no. And it's okay to say, I need this time and space for my own self-care in this season. And if that means I have to say no to you, then so be it. And so I think that's really important.
Just say no. Just say no. Amy, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Sure. I remember we recently had a conversation about loss. So we all experience losses at different stages and different ages in our life. Like you may have had a loss during childhood, and that may affect you differently than having a loss in your 20s or your 30s, whether it be in the middle of you completing your education or after you've had a child. You know, different things, different stages in our life, and you can be like I don't know, like when I had my son, I was like, man, like I wasn't tearful, I wasn't upset, but it was like I would have always thought that like my mom would have been here when I had my first child, or that she would have been here when I graduated high school, things of that sort. So you have to be mindful when trying to help other people cope, you know, that hey, just because you also went through it, you lost your mom or you lost your dad, it may be totally different totally different for you than for the next person because of the stage that you were at in your life when you may have lost that person.
That's good. D Smooth, how important it is for a Black man to talk about grief?
It is very, very, very crucial because talking about it helps me get over it. Just being able to tell my story and then the triumph of my story literally helped myself, and then it helped the next person that I talk to, because people deal with mental illness every day, and depression is really real. So I advocate for Black men to actually have that time to, whether it be your significant other, whether it be somebody that you just met, but make sure it's somebody that you trust, that you can tell your feelings to, and that you can have a sit down conversation and not judge you for being open and honest. Because as a Black man, we don't really, it's not popularized to actually tell our feelings because we don't want to seem weak. And we can't seem weak because we also have other things, other underlying things that we have to battle with every day. So it's so important that you have that time to sit down and say, whew, today was a bad day. I thought about X, Y, and Z. And I don't know what to do. I'm scared. I don't know how to deal with this. It's important to have those conversations, and it's important to have somebody to talk to, because those types of conversations and those key things really, really save your mental, and it helps you go day to day with everything that you've been tasked with. So I tell Black men that, look, you need to have that conversation with somebody that you trust.
Have the conversation when it comes to grief with somebody that you trust, and I'm going to add, is somebody that really care about you, that's not going to run and say, oh, she's weak. Oh, she can't handle this. What do you mean? Make sure that you are talking to an individual that you can pour out to, and they're not going to run and tell everybody what you're going through. So that's very important. Pastor Petty, is there anything you would like to add to that?
Well, you can learn a lot from being on a plane and about how to really deal with trying to walk alongside of people. If you notice, when the steward and stewardesses start giving out directions and they talk about the oxygen level in the plane, and they talk about that the mask will come down, and although you may have someone who needs oxygen before they got on the plane, could have been sitting next to you, but the first thing they tell you is put the mask on yourself and then try to help someone. The tendency sometimes is we are premature in trying to step into the space to join in to help, and we may suffocate ourselves because it's too overwhelming, because we didn't do. We take on more than we should, because the excess activity is one of the side effects of dealing with grief, is to take on more than we can, because suddenly we become a superhero. Unfortunately, that happens more times than it should, but you need to take care of you first. If it means not doing anything other than your basic routine, the best thing is to not change your routine a great deal, because that provides a level of stability for you. And then when you recognize, you can begin to walk alongside, but it should be very, very limited until you're at your healthiest place, because you could have a setback so quickly because the instability that exists in the transition. So take care of you first and foremost. Like one of the first things that someone should do when they are dealing with grief is to go get a physical. Go and get a full-blown physical. Let me see how I am in case something out of the ordinary has transpired that has affected me, because it very easily could. Your blood pressure could go up. You could start having some other types of things that are really very difficult, that are beneath the surface that you would not know about, but you're taking the steps to be able to know it. Another thing, if you're not on an exercise routine, it would be to get into one to put you in a very good place to be able to, if you're not on a multivitamin regimen, get on one, because you need all the help that you can get. Because if you think about it, it's traumatic. You're talking about being traumatized with loss. And as a result of that, you look at what trauma does, it unravels. It has points of pain that you're not even aware of, until you stop and say, well, I didn't even know that, until you've slowed it down enough. And that's why you don't really just dive in.
Wow.
Wow.
Trauma has points of pain that you did not even realize that you had down inside of you until you lost someone. Wow.
Oh,
That's really good. That's really good.
Wow.
Yeah.
When we think about trauma and we think about pain, growing through this process, have you guys used any unhealthy mechanisms to cope while growing through this grief process that you would like to share, or that you feel comfortable with sharing?
I would say I have a tendency to self-isolate to the point where it's unhealthy and to completely shut down. Sometimes even with my spouse, and nobody knows what's wrong with me at the moment. I just stay in my room sometimes, like really getting to a point where it's just me by myself, and it's like, I don't want to be a burden to anyone, or I don't want to, you know what I mean? And that can be super unhealthy to a certain point, right? And I do have that tendency. And so what's helped me with that is like my husband being accountability for me and saying, hey, I know this habit that you have. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm noticing. How can I help you, right? How can I not pull you out of it, but be alongside you and point out when I am falling into that. So I think right now that is probably the unhealthiest. In the past, when I was in college, like wasn't necessarily grieving like a person, but grieving certain relationships. Alcohol. I abused alcohol in college, and that was super unhealthy for me too. And so I think there's a lot of unhealthy, but those are the two that really come to mind when you ask that question. Because we need community. Like we do.
Yes, we do.
We need community.
One is one for me is self-isolation too as well. I find myself not wanting to be around people as much when I do have the opportunities to go around people, but I kind of attributed that to kind of growing a little bit. But it was like when I was out, I would overdo the drinking. So I'm shots, dark, white, whatever it is, just trying to force myself to have fun and kind of turn myself into the old me, who of course could go home to his mom and be like, I need the home remedy so I can feel better in the morning. But now that not having her and having that remedy, it's like you just want that feeling back. So that was that the drinking was really, and it's still a habit when I go out, but I'm working on it. So I'm trying not to go out as much. So it's that those two things are really, really prevalent with me.
Anybody else want to add anything?
I can. Part of my background is a little bit loud, but shopping. Everyone that knows me knows that I love to shop, just because I love to shop. But it could also be filling the void, filling the void too. And probably have just never really acknowledged it. And then in my younger days, like, you know, my relationships, I was always known for being in like a serious relationship. I always haven't had a boyfriend. And so I went an extended period of time without being in a relationship, and I had to find myself again, find what I liked and what I didn't like, because my identity, my attachment was always to another man for some reason. For some reason, I was always just, I always kept somebody. I was always with somebody. So I had to learn myself as an individual, like truly an individual, not as being on as someone's girlfriend or, something like that. So that and that was just even from a very early age, from age like 14, 15, So that was just definitely different for me.
Yeah. I know for me, it has been that I'm really clingy towards people. Like I'm overly emotional and I'm clingy. Like I'm super, super clingy to my brother and my friends and my family. Like I just like, okay, I need you guys right now, So it's weird how these emotions come up when you lose someone. We have Shelly Kramer. She just said, I just lost my uncle. Shelly, we are praying for you. She said, I'm having trouble breathing and I just don't want to get out of bed. Any tips? For anybody that would like to give her any tips? She says she just lost her uncle and she's having trouble with getting out of bed.
So Shelly, what I did and what I had to start doing was I had to find different things for myself to kind of take me out of that mindset of just staying in bed. So I started to find exercising to kind of fill the void of just laying there. Because as I just laid there, days passed. Seconds passed, then minutes passed, then hours passed, and then it's like, okay, I spent the whole day, just sitting there. So I was like, what can I do that really would kind of would motivate me again? And I know that's probably what you're looking for, is some motivation to actually get you out of bed. So my advice would be to find something that's out of the ordinary, or that you haven't done before, or something that you do want to do to kind of get you in that spirit of getting out of bed.
No.
That's good. I think one thing that helped me was journaling. And part of it was just journaling how I was feeling, but also what's helped me is just to name 3 to 5 things that I am grateful for in this moment. And I was reminded of that when Pastor Petty said, life is for the living. And sometimes it's so hard to see outside of our own situations and how we're feeling. And so just pushing myself to say, okay, I know I'm feeling this way, and checking in with how I am actually feeling, but also saying, okay, but what is just 2, 3 things that I'm grateful for today, and being able to add on to that each and every day. It really helped. It helped my spirit, and leaning in, I'm a believer. And so just leaning into God. Pastor Petty was talking about it's either gonna, drive you away from him or closer to him. That was my exact experience in the hospital room with my brother. I was like, okay, this is the fork in the road. I knew it. And so, but just knowing that I had the ability to choose at that moment, and then trusting God to help me and put into practice even the smallest things, 2, 3 things you're grateful for, even the smallest things, moving my body, stretching, to say, I have something to live for, and I am here, and so what would my brother want from me? And that really helped me, is just trying to see the blessings in the middle of the chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely believe in seeing the blessings in the middle of the chaos. I remember when my mom first passed, and after her service, I took off of work for a month, and I was just laying in the bed. That's pretty much all I was doing. Well, almost in a depressive state, not much of the anxiety, but the depressive state. And I just felt like that the Spirit of God came to me and it was like, okay, your mom did not die for you to stay depressed. And he had me and he led me to my journal. He told me to go outside. and I started writing everything down. And then when I went outside, I saw a cardinal. And when I tell you, since September of last year to now, I see a cardinal almost every day. So I can be crying over my mom, and then the cardinal just comes. Pastor Betty, I don't always know what that is. I feel like it's a sign, but I have definitely been seeing the cardinal every day, and it helps me, just that process of journaling, that process that I know that, you know, of course, my mom is not here in the physical anymore, but she's still present, you know? So I just thank God for that experience, just being led outside, because I'm not a nature girl. I don't like to deal with the trees and camping and all of that, but God led me to peace, to just go outside and spend time with him, because to be honest with you, I couldn't pray, because I'm like, Lord, I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. And I thought that you was going to heal her. I saw my mom bounce back from so much. And I'm like, you know, what happened? So there was an issue I had, you know, at the beginning when my mom first passed, you know, praying and pouring out, you know, but sometimes we have to listen to the voice of God so he can lead us and guide us to the way of healing. He is the one that lead us and guide us to the way of healing. And then he has resources out there for us for individuals to help us. Like the first thing I thought was, I need to see a therapist. I haven't seen a therapist in years. When my mom first passed, that's the first thing that came out of my mouth. I need to see a therapist.
Yeah.
So with bringing up therapy, what techniques or tools have been beneficial to you? Because we want to make sure that with this conversation, we are helping individuals that are growing through grief. So the things that they have learned from us, they can take it back and apply it to their lives.
Absolutely. Outside,
I have
go
one.
ahead.
I could add something for Shelley, which is important. Just like somebody who's wanting to start either an exercise or a walking regimen, you find a partner. And a very critical piece to all of this is when loss occurs, it is the need to have at least one individual, one person that you will make yourself accountable to. That what they will do is, much like when I don't feel like getting out of bed, they will call me and say, okay, what time is it? What are you doing now? Well, let me see what you're doing. Let me know that you're out. Are you out of the bed? If you're out of the bed, let me hear some water running. Let me hear that you're knowing we're doing this. And you're walking through the process, because it is you're having to unlearn an embedded behavior that is stepped in without you choosing for it to come in, but it's there. And so now you have to ultimately end up unlearning it. You didn't plan to start shifting your behavior and your routines, but they're there, and they don't just go away. They have to be unlearned, because before you can learn something new, you have to unlearn something that's not good, and then you can replace it. But you can't replace something new until you unlearn the old, or the old will always creep in, and you'll find yourself returning back to that which you're trying to get away from. So you have to learn how to not do in order to learn how to do. So therefore, if I'm stuck in, then that means then there has to be something different that I will do at night before I lay down. I have to change my routine before I go to bed. Then I have to change my routine in terms of what happens when I am aware that I am awake. When I'm aware that I'm awake, what do I typically do at that point? And I have to replace that with something that no longer is the routine that I'm interested in keeping. So your life and your development, if you really think about this, you're experiencing loss even when you don't lose a loved one. So we have practice in terms of dealing with loss, but we don't necessarily transfer it over when it comes to a loved one. We make adjustments all of the time when something isn't there. Think about this. You run out of something in the house, some item, something you need. You run out of it and you adjust in order that you're not in that place. So we have these transferable skills already embedded, but someone has to help us to know that they're there. They're already there. we make adjustments all the time, but suddenly the tendency sometimes is to say it's not a transferable one when it's something that we consider to be more dramatic, when actually your makeup says it's just another shift that you ultimately make. So, Shelly, you wasn't always in the bed. You were not always staying in the bed, but you broke the routine that didn't allow you to stay in. Shelly, you didn't always have that issue of dealing with breathing. So now it's in you to get back to that place. Are you all following what I'm saying? It's already there. It's in you, but there has to be an intentional process to say, I know I need to shift, and I have to intentionally focus on that. Part of the challenge is we're not as intentional because we say, I know I need to do it. I know it's a good idea. I know I probably ought to do it, but I'm not intentional. But when either one of us has made up our mind about doing something, we don't let anybody stop us from doing it. We like, okay, you know what? It didn't work that time, but I'm going back at it. When you are intentional enough, when it is important enough to you, then now you will become locked in and say, this is a must do and not something to be considered.
Yeah, Dr. Petty, that's so good. So good. So good. I appreciate that. We all know we're like 5 minutes before our hard stop, and then probably getting some feedback from our audience, because we know we have a lot of people tuned in, and we want to say thank you so much to those who are tuning in and asking questions and getting feedback. So the last question we have here is, how has your journey been from grief to growth? From grief to growth. Where have you seen yourself grow? How has the journey been from grief to growth?
So I'll start. One thing that I've learned is that grief and grief and struggle are necessary to achieve greatness, I guess. And just going through the motions of grief literally taught me how to live again. So as Pastor was saying, like, life is for the living. And now I feel like that's a thing that I'm going to like live by now, because that's a word. And acknowledging that life is for the living, and acknowledging that I still have a purpose on this earth and time on this earth to live it out. I feel like that is the key opportunity, and that is the growth that I had to experience mentally first, and then spiritually I had to experience growth, and then physically I had to experience growth. So it attributed to my grief attributed to me growing in every single way, mind, body, and soul. And I just know that now, walking in my purpose, I'm more fulfilled with life, and I have it feels like I have a second breath. And to have that second breath, and to be here with my second breath, and to have the opportunities that I do is like no other. And it's like a high. It's like a really long high, and I'm just enjoying it.
Awesome. I could chime in. I think one of the biggest things for me is really living in the both and not the either or. And so I have learned to be, I'm just because this has happened to me and I feel sad and I'm grieving, that doesn't mean I can't experience joy, right? That doesn't, I'm grieving with a hope, right? And so for me, that has just been so impactful to know, because a lot of times you feel like you almost feel guilty for experiencing joy sometimes, because you're like, how can I be feeling good and laughing and have a good time, and yet this happened? And so just dealing with, like, it's a both and. It's not an either or. You don't have to choose. It's living in the tension. I was just talking about, I was working on a blog post for my blog, and about living in this tension right now between grief and gratitude. I am thankful, and yet I miss him. Right? I am like both. It's a both and. And I think the other thing is that my brother was taken so suddenly and so young, where I know that tomorrow's not promised, but it's a different knowing when something like that happens. And so I have found myself just like, doing things afraid, you know, like dreams that I've always wanted to do, things I've always wanted to do, just going for it. And so I feel like I have growth. I'm way more comfortable setting boundaries, and really prioritizing taking care of myself. Because just like Pastor Petty was saying, like my body started changing as I was grieving. And so sitting in silence, I know it sounds kind of crazy, it might sound weird, but even like 3 minutes and just sitting in silence to hear, learning grounding techniques, right? Like just tuning into one sense, closing my eyes and just thinking, like identifying all the individual streams of sound that I can hear, just trying to get to know myself better and knowing God and really leaning into my faith more than I ever have. And really experiencing the fruit of the Spirit, even in the midst of such a hard season, which has been amazing to feel. So those are kind of the key takeaways from my journey this year.
That's good. Anybody else? Amy, is there any takeaways that you would like to give?
Just to be brief, like my grief is just a part of my testimony. You know, it's a part of my overall story, my journey of how I got to where I am now. And I feel like if things were different, if things wouldn't have happened the way that they would have, I don't know where I would be today. So I mean, there's a reason behind everything. And I still take the strength of the women that have raised me. You know, I still take their teachings, their memories, the things that I can hold on to, you know, that bring back positive things, just anything, you know. So I don't know. It's like I said, it's just been a part of my overall life. It's a part of me, and I don't want to remove any of it.
It's good. It's good. I don't want to remove any of it. Wow. Grief is making us better people, if that makes sense. I know he has definitely made me a better person, a better friend, a better sister. And what I'm learning through this process is that God gives us beauty in traumatic experiences. And I never thought I would be able to say that. Like, God, how can you give me beauty in traumatic experience? Like, how can you be with me when I'm broken, you know? But he is near the brokenhearted. He is near individuals who experiencing grief or just lost someone. So I just want, I was going to have Pastor Petty close us out, but he was just removed. But anything that you want to say to encourage someone that is out there that is dealing with grief, the floor is open for you as well. But we just want to make sure that you know that you have a community of individuals who care about you, that's there to support you, that's there to give you the resources that you need. And it's very interesting that we're having this conversation. I remember last year when my mom first passed, and Amy looked at me and she said, "You know what you can talk about now, sis?" And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Grief." And I was like, "No." Here I am. Hello. Here I am.
All right. Let me. I'll just say this one thing, and that is, if you like yourself at all, then you would not like yourself if you've not experienced grief, because that would be a missing component of your of the fiber of your personhood. And so if you remove any aspect of it, then you're not who you are. So therefore you would not be liking yourself, because there will be something missing.
Good.
Wow.
Dr. Petty, I appreciate you on so many levels.
You are the sum total of all of your experiences that have come together at this moment to shape and define your knowledge base, your ability to make decisions, your capacity to tolerate certain things, and a motivation to get things done.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You are a sum total. So the grief was not a mistake.
It wasn't.
It happened for a reason, you know. Wow.
Yeah. My encouragement is to embrace all of the feelings. I love what you said. we have to be okay with all the feelings that we're feeling at that time. So many people want to say, I don't feel that. Well, I don't feel that. If you feel that, it's okay. Or they question why they're angry, why they're upset. Like you said, why am I experiencing joy? Am I forgetting about them because this just happened? No, it's okay to embrace and accept every feeling that show up. That's one thing I tell my best friend, because my best friend lost her mom last year. And her mom was like a second mom to me, you know. And so when your friends lose, I love Pastor Petty when he said, make sure you're okay and don't take junk into an unstable situation. You got to make sure you're okay before you start consoling and comforting people, because that hit me too. That's her mama. You're right, Dr. P. That's her mama. So, but I also knew her as a mother. So I can't go in there like, no, that's her mom. And I love her mom. And she was a mother to all of us. But to see her in pain, I'm in pain. Yeah. And I love, one of the things I always reiterate to her even now, because it's just been a year since she passes. Embrace every feeling you feel right now. It's okay. Don't shut it down. Don't suppress it. Don't say it ain't real. Don't try to talk yourself out of it. No, feel those feelings, because nobody say when you stub your toe, don't feel that. Or if you hit the funny bone that ain't really funny, don't feel that. You know, no, feel it. You get what I'm saying? Feel it. And so for me, I tell people to feel whatever feeling you feel at that moment, because that's your natural feeling. That's a natural emotion, and you can't get rid of that. But you can process through that, and you can get coached through that, and you can get counseled through that. But if you shut it down and say it doesn't exist, then, like he just said, you're lying to yourself. You got to feel every feeling. So I just want to encourage people, like he said, to be patient, to take your time, to talk to the right people, not only just people, talk to the right people, not only that you trust, but who can help you grow through it, and then just be patient with you. And like he said, be available. I mean, even being with Panthers last year, you know, even me having to be patient with her back-to-back growth moments of grief. So it's just like, hey, being there for her, however she show up, because that's another thing. We want them to show up in the way you want them to show up in the way that you met them. If they hit a hard hit, how you expect them to show up in the way that you met them? I can't expect the Pam because we get used to that. Well, I want Amy, come back to life. No, you have to give people time to get through their process. So I can't be saying, well, where's the Pam I met 2 years ago? The Pam I met 2 years ago has some voids now. She has some dents in her. She has some things she's going through. So we all have to be patient. I still have moments where I cry. My grandmother passed in 2012. That still hurts. My dad passed when I was a kid. That still hurts. My uncle just passed, a couple years ago. That still hurts. Friends, all kinds of things that happened in the past. It still hurts.
Yeah.
So feel whatever that feeling is and be okay with those emotions and expressing those.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Wow. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. This has been amazing. I hope that you are able to tag someone that is going through the grief process, or have lost someone, or who is experiencing loss, and be able to take notes and get the necessary help that you need in order to grow. Queen of Resilience is here to support you. Reach out to us, and we will definitely give you the resources you need. Before you all go, I want to thank every panelist that's on here. You guys did an amazing
Great job. Yeah.
I want to thank Precious, the president, co-host of QOR Conversations. Thank you for being here, and thank you for walking with me. You know, Amy and Precious and Pastor Petty, you know, and my brother and my other friends, they have walked with me. They see Pam on her good days, and they see Pam on her bad. They have been definitely consistent with me, and that's what I appreciate. So before you all go, just say your name, where these individuals can find you, so they can talk to you and have conversations as well with you. Geraldine?
Yeah, so this was wonderful. Thank you so much. You can find me on social media, Jim Coaching and Wellness, both on Facebook and on Instagram. And I also have a blog, and it's just my name. So www.JeralynRoberts.com.
Thank you. D Smooth?
Everybody, you can follow me at @the_D Smooth. That's 2 O's, 2 E's with a V in the middle on Instagram. And you can follow me at D Smooth Shabazz or Smooth Shabazz on Facebook. And you can follow me at @the_D Smooth on Twitter as well. Also, make sure you tune in to my show, Voice of the Streets, 5 to 8, Tuesdays through Saturday.
Thank you. Amy?
So on all my social media handles, I'm always at Nurse Amy, but I'll be coming out soon with a new handle at the Women's Practitioner. So I hope to get a new following soon. Me and Pam are working on a project, so hopefully we'll have a little something out soon.
Awesome. And last but not least, Pastor Petty.
I think you better give it so that I don't fade out and it gets lost in translation. You can tell them all the information that you have.
All right, Pastor Petty is at kingdomanswers.org. Kingdomanswers.org. All right. Well, again, I thank you all for tuning in. I hope you learned something. I hope you was able to take some notes. And we are praying for you through the holidays when it comes to grief. And you guys have an amazing night. Thank you all.
Thank you.